if you're listening at home, I know that it sounds ridiculous, but I think when riding this time of year, it's a bit slower. There's a bit, the ground's not so firm. A 150mm bike feels really nice. I feel that when I ride best, it's because I'm happy to get the bike really close to me and happy to get it really far away. And then we have these like expectations when it comes to mountain biking. And it's like, until 5 years ago, our bikes were shit. And he said, what do you think of e-bikes? And I just said, I think they're, at the time I was kind of gatekeepery and kind of like, fuck this. I was like, I think they're wank. I think they're fucking stupid. I don't like them, X, Y, Z. Tadej Pogačar. He's probably got an FTP of what, like 400 watts. 400 watts is enough.
Yeah.
Imagine having Tadej Pogačar and saying he's going to sit in your downtube for 2 hours doing everything.
Henry Quinney, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
So you asked me a couple of days ago when we organized to do that if I had any plan. Mm-hmm. And the short answer is I've got absolutely no plans. Mm-hmm. You love biking, very knowledgeable. I love biking too, so let's
fucking have bikes. Yeah. See, I like this. I think that, I don't know, just having a discussion and it just being very back and forth is perfect.
Yeah. And like for me, it's, if I want to keep doing this podcast and actually have fun, I don't want them to become stressful, where you prepare a list of questions and a list of points, and then you set like expectation to hit every point. And so I just want to keep it fun. I'm passionate about mountain biking, so I just want to talk about bikes.
Yeah, totally.
So let's start with what's your current favorite trail to ride in Squamish in those conditions?
Oh, there's a trail that's sort of off Angry called Gerbil Track.
Okay.
And honestly, I just fallen in love with this trail.
Is it the one that...
It's going down this gully.
Yeah, and then it puts you on Alf Nelson.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in at least
It's worth doing, because now, have you been over the bridge? And it takes you onto Angry?
Yeah.
Back onto where it's had the good bit of work done. And I know, I think I'm a bit of like, I try and not be a like evangelist gatekeeper, but there is part of my personality which is quite like sort of, I think like I get quite concerned about things. So for me, I get concerned about riding trails when they're too soft. So I think about what I can ride that's the most suitable for the wet weather. So I tend to ride, I'm happy riding like Angry and bedded in trails a lot.
I respect that a lot. Sometimes I wish I was more like this.
But it's hard, eh? And like, I don't know, I mean, it's not like, I think that we're here, we're so lucky in Squamish, it rides so well in the wet. And it's not like I'm going out there fucking digging trails all the time. And I know people that do dig loads who are like, have at it. We're meant to enjoy this thing. But there's this part of my brain which is just,
Totally. I've been riding the sauce today.
Yeah, I think everyone's been riding the sauce.
You can tell. Yeah. There's like ruts everywhere. And I saw Ryan Griffin that was working on it yesterday.
Yeah.
And, that first berm when I went by yesterday, because he just had worked on it, was perfect. Mm-hmm. Today, it's like a massive rut.
Yeah.
But it's really fun.
It's really fun. And I think there's one of those things where like, like those boys that have this amazing like World Cup level track from the top now, and it ruts up, but I think they don't really care because they're happy to work on it so much. And there's a good group of them. They get stuck in.
And also, they want the ruts.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they need the ruts to practice. Because when do you get ruts where your pedal actually drags the floor on a normal trail? You normally don't. But on a World Cup track, it's quite common.
But that's also like, I think where trails are built really plays into, because if someone builds something from there, basically this is the hub of Squamish mountain biking, they're not under any illusion that it's not going to be absolutely ragged. But I think it's when people build stuff out the way that's a bit secret and it's really soft and people go ride that in the wet, like they know what they're getting themselves in for. So I don't know, I think and shout out to those guys, they're building amazing stuff.
Totally, yeah. And honestly, it's probably what they want, because they like the flow, but they build that to be a practice track, essentially, right? Because you got the first part a bit rougher, then it gets really steep, and then the sauce is faster, bunch of lines now. I think they purposely open it and purposely have like a few different lines to, when the outside is going to get too damaged, then you have to start taking the inside and then the contrary. So I think they quite enjoy it and it's all rutty.
I can see you kind of getting quite into the line choice. Do you miss the racing side of things?
No, I don't miss the racing side of things, but I never missed it because I keep doing it, but I love looking at lines.
I love
figuring out what's faster, what's safer, what's better, also what's more fun. Because, sometimes I take a line that I know is slower, but it's more fun. So depending what I do, often nowadays I go for the most fun lines. Even if it's out of the way, I know it's slower, but it's gonna be quite interesting.
Yeah.
So when you ride, actually, since we talk about trails and riding, when you look at a trail, are you looking for something in specific, like the fastest line, something where you can, test the bike, something that's going to be more playful, more fun, something that's going to be more challenging?
I think when I think about how to ride a turn, I am a real mainline with confidence sort of rider. I guess I think that, I get to ride these trails all the time. And so I'm very lucky, but I don't have like the depth of skill of someone as yourself. So for me, it's more about like, it sounds stupid, but when you ever seen Gordon Ramsay? And he's like an English chef.
Oh yeah, Gordon Ramsay. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And he's there just saying to these people like, I like just cook simple ingredients well.
Yes.
All this fucking nonsense. You are not a Michelin star chef. Yeah. Your restaurant is going in the shit. Just do this. And so I feel I'm that bad chef and I need you to get fresh produce that's sourced locally and cook it simply. And if I can do that, I think for me, that's why I think I'm not call it as I see it, but like my like medium ground of ability is so useful because how to put this, like, I'm not some like hugely talented rider that's able to like rag anything. But I think that over the years, I've developed a very particular geometry ideal and suspension ideal that enables me to ride closer towards my limit. So in a way, it's like being handicapped in terms of skill has been this amazing opportunity to learn about consistency in terms of setup.
Yeah.
Because when something, I can't just turn my brain off and, and accomplish something using the talent that I don't have. If it's not really good for me and I don't like it, I'm fucked. So it's kind of useful.
To see it.
Yeah.
Well, so talking about that, we'll talk about bikes a bit later on, but I was thinking about this today actually, because I just did a lap. It kind of made me lose a lot of my confidence because recently I've been riding really hard, the same trail. I've been dialing my setup. And now I took a different bike. And the purpose of this ride today was not to have fun, was just to look for some things that I might film tomorrow or the next day. So I didn't go with the optic of like, okay, I'm going to have fun on my bike. I'm going to go fast. I'm going to go and check out this trail that I haven't ridden in a long time, see if some things change. And so I was riding and kind of looking around. My setup on the bike was made to actually go fast. But because I was going slow, I felt like I was smashing on every hole. I couldn't do like some little transfers that you would naturally do that would be like fun and fast. And I was like, wow, today, instead of like gaining confidence by riding more, I actually lost confidence because now I'm all over the place and I'm not even going fast because I'm, just not in that mindset. What do you do on the bike that you feel either help your confidence or the contrary, that slows down your confidence?
I think for me, a big part of like sort of returning to confidence is like, I think sometimes as riders, especially maybe more my skill set than your skill set, is the biggest barrier for us is making the bike feel like an extension of our body. And I think it's so, we get like the difference between riding like, with confidence and without it can sometimes just be like, how to put this, like not preloading and unweighting the bike properly, not actually really, riding the arms just a bit overextended, never actually
feeling like a passenger.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that for me, when I need to feel confident, I really just focus like in moving my body, but just making sure that like I'm using the range of my arms. I feel that when I ride best, it's because I'm happy to get the bike really close to me and happy to get it really far away. Okay. And I'm happy to kind of like, think about how my shoulders and my handlebars correlate to one another.
Like really active.
Yeah, really active. And I think that when I'm riding worst is because when riding without confident, is because I'm fighting the bike and the bike's actually very upright and that makes it's washing more. And I'm not, my mass is then, say if the front wheel drops and my arms are closer to extension, that means I get pulled. And so I think there's so much that we think about in terms of how our bikes ride. And maybe one of the reasons I'm so keen on these higher stack bikes is they can actually just really focus on your relationship between like your almost like your upper body and the angle that it's at and your hands. And you can kind of really ride the bike with a lot of like intention with your hands. And that's the riding and style that I find sort of rewarding. And I feel like I ride my best when it's like that. And I mean, confidence is a funny thing. I mean, it's weird, I think, especially when you've got something where, I mean, the stakes are obviously relatively low in media creation compared to other things, but of course we've always got shit to do and we've always got to be out there riding and whatnot. And I think when you don't have confidence, but you need to be out there riding, you can kind of get in a bit of a can of worms, you know?
Yeah. Like, I love mountain biking, but mountain biking without confidence, I hate it.
It sucks.
Especially because you got, like, since we do it every day, we got expectation of how we should be riding, how comfortable we should be on a certain trail, on a certain jump. And as soon as you don't have that, I think it becomes really hard. I can get the confidence back fairly quickly, but I need to like refocus. And I need to be willing to do the work. And sometimes it's like, well, it's wet and slippery. Well, fuck it. I need to, put on my helmet, put my pads on, look at the line. And, I know I've done it in the past. I know how I need to remember myself. I can do this. It's simple. You push into the corner, you preload, you don't panic, and you brake after, the slipper, like the slippery routes or whatever. As soon as I do it and it goes well, then it starts to unlock and I start to feel better. But yeah, not having the confidence is tough, but you definitely need to work on keeping it because it can go away. Really quick.
Go away. But I think it's also really, and I think like expectation of, there were so many professional comedians that could go onto a stage and like die. It's going horribly, and they just learn to like, whatever the version of running with that is and being comfortable in that context they can do. And I think also there's a thing where you see, I think the really good World Cup riders is they understand how like contextual feeling bad on a bike is. Holy shit, it's super rutted and it's slippy and it's steep. Yeah, I feel bad on a bike. But there's other set of riders, which I think without that experience, where they kind of internalize that. And it's like, the reason it feels fucking horrible, look at what you're riding. Because it's horrible. Yeah.
No, there's some situation where you can't feel good. It's a trail, like some trails, for example, in Squamish. You ride them when it's perfect. There is a storm overnight. Suddenly everything is slippery. You used to preload the suspension to do that sneaky gap. And on the edge on the run-in, there is like a bunch of off-camber routes. And just on the takeoff, there is that slippery, like shiny route. When it's dry, that's fine. Then put some water on this, try to do it again and try to feel confident. Unless you do it over and over in the wet and you're like, okay, it's fine, I'm not sliding, you can't really be confident. It's really difficult. And so like for the World Cup riders, or like anyone racing, like you definitely need to readjust your expectation. But then you can look at the other riders. You stop on the side of the trail. You're like, oh, I'm struggling with this. I'm scared. Turn and you see Jackson Goldstone doing it like if it was dry, with like perfect control, perfect style. And then, Troy Brosman or Loic Bernie behind him doing exactly the same. You're like, well, I need to work on something.
But that, watching especially your POVs, that precision has always really amazed me. On the big rock moves, your ability to be the placement of the bike. Is that something you practice or something is it something you've always been able to do? Because it feels like obviously we only see what you put out, so I don't know what really goes through your eyes, but it seems to me that
I do stuff many times.
Yeah, it seems that you can just
but to be honest, like the viewer at home will not make the difference. But me, I know that when I landed, maybe like my ankle didn't flex enough because I was like worried about the impact. So therefore like my shoulder took more weight, and I redo stuff because I know I could do it better. And I usually do it over and over until I feel like I've done the best I could. If, Semenok or whoever shows up and does it better, I don't care. That's fine. But me, I want the feeling that I've done it the best I could. But I treat everything a bit like a World Cup racer. I watch the line, I look at it, I think about it. Should I come from this side of the rock or this side? Like, should I take this exit or this one? Like, I just treat it kind of the same way, and then I practice just like you'll practice at a racetrack. So we're gonna talk more about riding and bikes, of course. But who are you? What's your background?
So I was incredibly lucky to kind of fall into this, to be honest with you. I always worked as a bike mechanic, which, like me as a teenager, my parents are kind of quite hippy-dippy, and I left school at pretty much the first opportunity and always wanted to be a bike mechanic. And they were just like, good for you, like, fair enough. Yeah. And so I just did that, and I absolutely loved it. And then got incredibly lucky to work for a shop called Vertigo Bikes in Queenstown, which was a great, I think, in resort towns, you get some of the more like core shops where you make like amazing connections and you meet really cool people and that on the circuit. And then, I got very, again, kind of lucked into, working on the World Cups, as a mechanic for a couple of years.
Which team?
So originally I started off with a really small team. It was run by Harry Malloy.
Okay.
Which was Patrol. Okay. And then Patrol over the years morphed and
with
changed.
Solid Bikes?
No, this was after his Solid years. Okay. So Solid, Patrol, and then he kind of left the team, and then it became Nuke Proof. And then the Nuke Proof, then he came back on. And so it was an interesting thing, but I was literally there just like, honestly, mechanicking is probably even a stretch. Like, I was really just lending a hand. There were 3 riders. They were doing a wheeler run at a World Cup. So it wasn't like high precision stuff. It was like fucking just helping them get out the door. Then I got, had a very happy opportunity to work for Polygon, Ebikes, which was an amazing, like, I don't know. It was really, really great in that I got to kind of, see the world, do like all I wanted to be as a mechanic. So for me to be like a World Cup mechanic was like the pinnacle of that.
Yeah, it's like being like a chef at a restaurant and the chef at a Michelin star restaurant.
But that's a good example, because I think looking back, like, I think when I went back to World Cup mechanicking with Pinkbike racing, I think I was, but everyone can always get better, and I'm certainly not finished, but like, I think I was good enough. At Polygon, to be honest, I think I was probably quite a good team member. I was very happy to muck in. But I think it was at a time where, like, if you just had a positive attitude and you could swap a rear mech, you could be a World Cup mechanic. Yeah. I think now, actually, what's really happening is, as there's more money put into the sport, there are fewer riders. So actually, I imagine the demand for ride mechanics like I was at that time is probably greatly diminished, and it's more like the race engineer mechanic,
Yeah, exactly. I think at this level, that's what it became. Like, Loïc. Sorry, Loïc's, it's a French name, and I know him, so I should get it right. But Loïc's mechanic, I think, is a great example of that. It's not like your typical mechanic that's gonna like through the wheel. It's like playing with every single detail on the bike, from like, how tight are the bolts, like spoke tension, like every single detail you can think.
Like the bike is like an organic moving thing, and it's almost like he's like a stable master, and it's like the prize-winning stallion. Yeah, I think. And so I don't know. I think World Cup for there are lots of things that I don't agree with what's happened with World Cup racing, but I think that for that high level of that granular setup and performance, having the resources and everything sort of concentrated towards a high level, providing there's a feeder series to let other riders get there, I don't necessarily know if it's a completely awful thing. I think we were the audience was like quite allergic to the idea. But
so I feel like there's mixed stuff. I feel like people were against it, but now with the semi-final, not semi-final.
Q2,
Q1, Q2.
Yeah.
Now that's how it's called. I think I made it very exciting.
I think it did. And also,
because now, even for the top riders, like, you could be Jackson Goldstein, you still have to make it to final.
Yes.
And that's like, either you get top 20 in Q1 or top 10 in Q2. Yeah. Which is incredibly hard, because anything can happen.
And it's tricky because it's a very small industry, so I don't want to get caught into, what I want to say, if I didn't have to worry about how it's going to come out, was that the changes as a fan haven't really bothered me. It was what felt like for a long time, the lack of communication was very frustrating. It felt like the sport wasn't changing. Something was happening to the sport. And as somebody that was very fortunate, because eventually ended up working in the media, working for Pinkbike, I was very well positioned to try and talk about the story. And even, working for a big website like Pinkbike opens a lot of doors in terms of trying to get information. And there was just a steadfast refusal to talk in on anything but their own terms. Now that might have actually been like the right political instinct, because in 2 or 3 years' time, who's going to look back and say, it might have actually been the right, don't explain, don't complain, just keep on going. But I know as someone that loved mountain bike racing and spent so much of their life trying to get into it and sort of be part of that circus, the fact that I didn't give a fuck about it for a couple of years is bad. I couldn't give a fuck. I was like, same with what happened to Enduro, which is maybe a stronger example. But there's so many barriers and reasons to not watch it. And it just became harder and harder. And I still don't think they've quite got it right yet, but I think it is better. I think the Q2 helps a lot with that. But when it's like, sweet, so if the solution at one point was you've got to give up 9 hours of your Sunday to listen to repeated commentary, and that's not to bag on the commentators. They're in a commentary booth for like 10 hours.
Yeah.
You fucking leave this camera rolling for 10 hours, it's going to get fucking boring.
And I think if the show is too long also, the big thing is it's a sport. Like motocross, supercross, everybody's on track at the same time.
Yeah.
But with the rain, there's nothing more frustrating than, for the top riders, doing a race run in, dry, good condition, and then it rains for the, second half of the field.
Well,
so the show can take too long.
I think totally. And that's another thing that kind of killed my interest was, we're going to Val di Sole, I think would have been 2024. So not that long ago. I think last season was actually really good racing, but the season before, and I remember just one, that it was the attendance was quite thin. That year I did Fort William, Leergang and Val di Sole. There wasn't an atmosphere. And then there was a 5-minute gaps. So the hardcore fans that were going out, standing in the pissing rain, and they get someone blurring past.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I don't know, man. It just felt like we were at this thing where maybe mountain bike is going to become it's going to have its drive to survive moment. It's going to become the next big thing. But maybe in 20 years, we're still going to be 100 people kicking around a muddy field, and that's okay too. It doesn't need to be this hugely commercial viable thing. It can just be really fucking cool.
Yeah, I understand the challenges and why they do that, because they've got the live TV, all the safety as well.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be able to, but you basically have to wait for one rider to cross the finish line before you can send another one down. So obviously there's a lot of that. But now talking about Enduro, Enduro at the start was, an amateur sport.
Mm-hmm.
It was just people riding together and racing down different stages. Then it became pretty professional, and now it's dying down and almost going back to its roots. So what do you think of that?
I think going back to its roots is a kind way of saying it. I think in the same way that it's going to die, decompose and fertilize something maybe in 10 years.
Okay.
But going back to, I think it was the coolest sport in the world. I thought it was fucking sick. And what I thought was really interesting, I don't know if it's maybe an issue, not so much about how we cover mountain bike races, but a observation of the human condition is when you just know something's cool is happening, and it's very exciting, and it's almost like what you don't see makes it more interesting, because it builds suspense, and then you're happy to wait until a couple of days later. But when you try and live televise everything, or get an immediacy to the coverage, which is worse then, but it shatters the intrigue. And this isn't something, it's the same with rally. We were just talking about rally, it's a problem that they have, and how to kind of bring the audience along.
Yeah.
But then I think what's on the other hand, we just mentioned it, but the people are hungry for story. And 6 months later, when they watch Drive to Survive, they know all the results. What they're looking for is behind the scenes. And so what I thought was super cool about Enduro is you would go see Sven Martin's photo epics and just be like, and the little caption, such and such happened. He punctured, or she did this and this happened. And it'd just be like, oh my God, all these secrets that I'm getting. And when it became you would just see people like ride a 2-minute stage flat out, get a camera shoved in their face, and they'd go, "Yeah, I'm quite tired." What the fuck is that? I don't care. But that's the way it just kills all like the romantic curiosity, and it just becomes like, and I don't know. I just think they should just like make them a packed lunch, give them a lift pass, say we're in fucking La Tuile, go descend 6,000 meters, you know, and we'll get some pictures, and it will be, I don't know, and like maybe it won't be again so commercial stuff, but I don't know, man. Like I think there will come a point where, like,
I think they made it a bit boring.
Yeah,
it's always the same pretty much. Whether it's like, you know, all the locations. So some of them, you know, you shuttle, some of them you pedal everything, some of them you do a bit of chairlift. But the format is, you know, 5 stages or 4 stages. I think what would be cool is to have a series, but have very, very different events. One is like mega balance style. One is like quite literally super short stage, but easy to film and, you know, like pretty gnarly, like almost like 5 downhills. One is like more like trail adventure, you know, much longer stages, like true spirit of Enduro. And you get like a bit of that. And also for each venue to have like almost like a prologue, like they do in motocross.
I think something I mean, it didn't go, I mean, understandably that they didn't go on it, but one of the things I kind of pitched at Pinkbike was this idea of doing like a blackout enduro.
Yeah.
So you get 10 riders and you don't worry about series. You kind of go back to its roots and you pick out like the Andes Pacifica, the BC bike race, not BC bike race, Trans BC, Trans NZ. And you basically say to these riders, we're going to make your results will not be put in the public results, and your results will come out for this World Series on the Tuesday. And then it could be like this thing, and there'd be no money in it. Then so, you know, it wouldn't be viable, but something like that, because Red Bull's doing it with that proving grounds. They embargo the result.
Yeah.
Like maybe the solution is everyone signs an NDA and they actually don't know their times.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
Yeah,
I'd watch that.
That's interesting. But I think like, so I used to like race locally some Enduros. That would have been 2010, 2011. So sport was still like pretty new. And when it was very friendly and no one knew the track, you had Fabien Marel showing up, Nicolas Vouilloz, you know, all the locals of around Nice. And the best thing was when no one knew the trails. And you could tell when no one knew the trail, like people will talk, you know, oh, I saw this guy was practicing like since Wednesday, he's been doing like 10 laps. But like very often and more often than not, sorry, Naya, off. What? More often than not, people will be not practicing.
Yes.
And that was incredibly fun.
Yeah.
Because then you are truly, whoever won was truly, you know, the best at Enduro. Yeah. As soon as it became like sponsor involved, and then you had like the small teams, and people were like, well, I got to practice because, you know, the guy that could beat me is going to practice as well. So everybody started to practice. And
even the corner cutting.
And that really lost the spirit.
Yeah. And then you hear incidents of, I mean, in the early days, tape interpretation, we'll call it. And I don't know, man, like, was it inevitable? Maybe that like the road it went down, but I think that, how to put it, I think sometimes we need to, in my opinion, I think we need to remember that like the media serves the sport shouldn't serve the media. Like this isn't some fucking juice to just get every last drop out and it just fucking fill the coffers of some people that don't even give a fuck about mountain biking. Like the media and how we cover these things and how it should be like, it's almost like, you know, when they see something in the wild and they just like, it's like a wild animal, almost like, you don't even interfere. You don't feed the animal. It's nature.
Yeah, you let it do its things.
Yeah. And I kind of think like, maybe that's like an overly romantic, like perception, but I don't know, man. I guess like it's okay for road cycling. They have so much money in it, and they have like the Tour de France is like the most watch annual sporting event. Wow. Yeah. I mean like, but and then we have these like expectations when it comes to mountain biking. And it's like, until 5 years ago, our bikes were shit. What are we doing here?
It's actually pretty funny. We'll talk about that later. But like, since when an enduro bike is very, very good?
Yeah.
I was actually, that was a question I was thinking, well, actually, we are at it.
Yeah.
Since when do you think there is enduro bikes or like long travel trail bikes that are actually very good in terms of like geometry,
that you'd ride today,
suspension, but also reliability? Because that's been a huge thing until.
Do you know? I would
recently.
say that Norco range, 2020 Norco range, 2021.
High pivot.
Okay. That is a bike I think you'd shred on today and have an
because it was heavy too.
It wasn't
and heavy.
It wasn't that bad, but like it was heavy. Like it was built sensibly, and the high pivot was a bit annoying. But like I think it's somewhere around that generation. There were other ones where like I've got a Spire still, 2021 Spire, and with an angle set that is honestly great. But I think in terms of like stock, like the Enduro was a great bike, and it's funny because the Enduro has been around so long, and it's technically a current bike, even though I think Specialized are, not that concerned with people buying them, put it that way. But I think that has been around for so long. It's seen the reach thing go crazy, and super slap, and then it come back around, and now it's contemporary again. I think the reach is a bit long, but if you could just take it, get that down a bit, it would be a great bike. But I think for me, 2020, 2021.
Okay.
What do you think?
Obviously the bike keeps getting better. Mm-hmm. They keep progressing. Like every single new model, any component on the bike, every new generation is better than the previous one. Mm. I can't really think of something where I prefer the previous version. Mm. Whether it's I like the new version because as the way it works, pretty simple. Companies and engineers learn from what they've done before. So you produce a bike, it's great, but it's got those few different things that people have been complaining about, whereas it's like, how the cables are going, like the brake mount, and the bike is too rigid or it's too flexy, or well, then they change it for the next version, right?
Yes.
So I feel like every new generation is better. So I think for me, if we talk about geometry, I think like 2021 is when I thought that a medium bike had a good geometry. Mm. Before that, I actually didn't know any better. Mm. I had the geometry I had. I knew it was a bit too small, and I looked around, and everybody was like, on the same number, like 435, 440. You started to have a few brands going like 445. I remember when I was on Cube, I had 437, I believe, was the reach of the stereo, so the 150 trail bike. And then when I got the stereo 170, which is a 170 trail bike, the reach was 444, I want to say. Mm. And I thought, that's going to be too long. Because I'd never tried actually a bigger bike. And then I got it and I was like, this actually is good. And now my ideal reach is like probably around 457.
Yes.
So it like kept going better because I tried more bikes and I tried like longer. I feel like the geometries have plateaued since a few years.
I think they have. But I think I remember when I went to GMBN and they were sponsored by Canyon and Nukeproof. And I was in this position which I can you can only imagine, going from working in work at mechanics and bike shops to being told you get given a bike to ride. I mean, dude, it was it's still I still pinch myself often, but it was an amazing thing. And I remember being that 470 reach of the Strive in 2019, it might have been 468. And I was like, that's a big, because I was I drunk so much Kool-Aid.
Because how tall are you?
I'm 6 foot.
Okay.
And so now
so you should be a large.
Yeah, I'm large. But what was interesting is that then everyone was talking about 480, 490, and it was getting bigger and bigger. And I was like, oh my God, is this bike going to be big enough? And of course it was. And now actually I've come down and down and down. And now I'm actually at 470.
So 470 is your ideal reach?
I think depending on the intention, I think I don't know how you approach it, but I think for a enduro bike, 475. I think for a downhill bike, maybe 465, 470.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, actually, we're going to do the same as I did with your previous coworker, Matt Beer.
Yeah.
So that was a previous episode, I guess. You guys can watch it
whenever they come out
on YouTube and Spotify. But I asked Matt. So Matt is in between like two sizes, pretty much. He's
5'10", which is the median, was like the most common height in North America.
Yes, but and yet he's
the one
medium and
it's so stupid, right? Yeah.
So because he's a very good rider, often he'll go for a large because he's got the skills and the technique to move the bike around. So probably gonna have like a more comfortable position overall with like slightly longer. But that's not true for most people. Most people, they can't really oversize, right? It's like buying skis. If you're a pro skier, sure, you can go with bigger skis. But when you're not that good, turning like big sticks is like pretty hard. So I've got these numbers, but what are your numbers? So you're 6 feet.
I'm 6 foot, so 183 centimeters.
Okay, so let's talk about an enduro bike, like the bike you'll buy if you were to ride Squamish every day, mostly pedal, do a bit of shuttling here and there. You're basically 160, 170 category, which is the most common bikes around here. So ideal geometry.
I would go for a 470 mil reach.
Okay.
About a 650 mil stack.
Okay.
I would go, basically, I want an effective top tube of around 620. So that would put me, I reckon, about a 77 degree seat tube angle. I'm not a massive, I think we went too much. I think we went too steep and it puts too much puts too much weight in your hands when you're climbing. And or it gives you something so cramped because the seat tube is so steep that you end up having to go crazy in terms of reach to get comfortable.
So why do you think companies in general went steeper and steeper with the seat tube angle?
I think because I think a lot of the time, and this is someone that I also at the time didn't understand, I don't think they understood. Like, so Leo Konkinen from Pole, when asking about the steep seat tube angles, we spoke about it, and basically, he basically strapped his forks down on his downhill bike and realized it was really, really good to have a steep seat tube angle. And I think so often we thought that we were having these, and just on the same page with the listener, when you have a really, really long reach, you can get a lot of that, you can bring the handlebars closer by obviously making the seat tube. But then we end up with a bike that could be 490 reach with an 80 degree seat tube angle. And the seat position, the distance between the contact points isn't too bad, but then it feels very big out the saddle. On the other way, you can get something which used to happen is that, bikes have a very, very slack seat tube angle and a very, very short reach. So the distance between the hand and the handlebars and the seat hasn't really changed that much. It's been, but I think what happened was we ended up, I think it was down to trying to keep that effective top tube number consistent around, say, 620 for a large. And I think that people realizing that similar, you said about skis, which is exactly, I think is such a fair comparison. But our version of in mountain biking was having lots and big reach was almost like having huge amounts of rocker. And it made the bike a lot safer because it put more bike between you and danger. Yeah. But also it meant that if you got something that was numb and unrewarding to ride, and then they had to get that back with the seat tube.
So so I think that's obviously one of the reasons. Another reason that I think is enduro bikes got more and more travels. Mm-hmm. So that means the distance between your rear axle going up increased. So the travel on the rear wheel obviously increased. Wheels got bigger, 26.
Yes, right, yeah.
Then 29, but 29 at the time were not for big enduro bikes, they were just for lighter trail bike, cross-country bikes, and 27.5. And I think what's happened is that suddenly the tires too close to the seat. Mm-hmm. And on top of that, every seat post manufacturer was like, 100 millimeter is cool, 125 is better, 150 is better, 175, 200. Yeah. So then, and I feel like I know that well because I'm small. Mm-hmm. So I've always had the challenge of how low can I put my seat without having the rear wheel smashing onto the seat when I'm close to bottoming out. And I think what happened is that also chain stays got longer as well. As the reach got longer, chain stays also got longer. But in order to avoid that the tire will touch the seat, manufacturer had to make the seat, the seat tube essentially a bit straighter. Seat manufacturer understood that and made the rear of the seat a bit shorter. And I think now it's all sorted out. They understood the formula where you can have the bike bottom out with the seat really low without any issue. But I feel like you still hear, especially on World Cup racing, because the bikes have more travel, rider run their seat low, you still hear the seat buzzing. So I think that's one of the big reasons why the seat tube went a bit.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, yeah.
Straighter. Because when you actually ride the bike downhill, if your seat tube is too steep, then the seat is not essentially where it should be.
Yeah, totally.
And when you actually ride the bike, the seat is nice when you pedal uphill. But me, I focus really on the downhill performance. The position of the seat is incredibly important to maneuver the bike and to control it. When you come into a corner, an off camber, I mean, even in the air, you use your seats actually much more than what people think.
So if I was riding, I had to collect something from Pemberton. This was like 6 weeks ago. My friend had never ridden there, so I said, "Hey, dude, let's go ride Pemberton." And we rode to the top on the first run, and we wanted to ride like some proper, like meat grinder and stuff. Don't even that, but like quite decky trails. And I didn't charge my seat post. So then I took the whole seat post and it was stuck up. So then I put it down on my leg, and it was like, so the saddle was here, and we're riding, and I couldn't believe how much, not having a saddle at all, how much I used it to gauge where the bike was.
Yeah, of course.
But anyway, so then I felt really bad because I've ruined his day. So I took him to shuttle some laps, and then immediately went home, and I forgot to collect the thing I went to fucking Pemberton for.
Is this like a Fox or a Reverb?
Fox.
It happened to one of my friends, but he was looking on ChatGPT. But the problem was somewhere was not enough cell reception to actually get internet. He was like, "Oh, I know there is a way to like get it back down." And in the end, it was just like a misconnection with the battery because everything was working, but just so he took the battery out, plug it back, and ended up working. But yeah, if we jump back to geometry, so we talk about the reach 470, for a size large, at tube angle.
I think 64 for an enduro bike.
Okay.
I think if I had 64 for most bikes, I don't know. I think that for me, maybe it's what I ride and whatever, but I'd rather have something a bit higher and steeper than have something that, I know, I just think that they cover off a better window in terms of a wider variation of speed. I think the slack stuff works really well when you're plumbing, but when you kind of just want that, like, to not feel like your bike's falling to side to side on short turns, short radius turns, I think that I'd rather go something a bit steeper and then get some of that stability back from higher front, which is why I'd also want a longer rear end to keep that high front calm.
So what rear ends?
I think for a 470 reach, I think 450.
450, okay.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. Like on a downhill bike, I might go slightly more, maybe 460.
I've never tried actually 460 on a downhill bike because my downhill bike, my rage goes 445 or 460. And I was always, like for the type of riding I do, I was really happy with 445, and also it's consistent with all my other bikes. So, well, except the Ebikes. So that way, on any bike, when I move the rear wheel, which I do a lot, it always feels the same, regardless of the bike.
But do you think, I think with it tends to be, I mean, some racers go for longer offsets than I would typically have, you know, like I can't remember, I think it's, Finn is running like a 55 mil offset on a fork, which is, I would say is too long. But then I just think also says that I think by having a long rear end, you can get something that, and I just think like the radius and the turns we ride on downhill bikes is that bit wider. So often I find like a 50 mil stem is actually really nice on a downhill bike, and longer offs, not as long as maybe that, but like a 48 offset is actually pretty nice because it just doesn't feel like we want to, like, obviously, you know, you do go through turns and stuff, but we're not trying to do really short radius turns in the same way. Yeah. It's
basically, I mean, the bikes are like, if you take an enduro bike, downhill bike, obviously they're very different, but the type of terrain you ride, the bikes on, are extremely different. Just the speed and the type of corners and how steep it is, the impact, everything is completely different. So of course that makes it tough to compare, but that makes me think of something. So for your dream enduro bike, well, first of all, the wheels. Like, I felt like that's something we should have talked about. Front wheel, rear wheel, Boss 29.
It's funny, me and Remy, my Remy at Quarter HP, were talking about it the day. And when I ordered, and they put the initial order in for wheels, I only ordered like one 27.5 Enduro rear, because I was like, a 29 rear, because I was like, everything's mixed wheeled now.
Yeah.
I've kind of come back to the 29. The full 29. I'm kind of like...
I think you turn enough.
Yeah. I can get away with it.
That you can get away with it on all situations?
Because the stacks have got higher. When the stack's lower, I hit my ass more, like on the tire. And so now I feel like I've just got more room. But I'd probably go full 29. I think a big thing for me would be, and there are different companies that make it, whether it's E13, O-Chain, it is absolutely 100% got to have some sort of chain management device, because I think it frees up what you have to do with the suspension so much.
Yeah.
And you get something that's simpler, where the leverage ratio and the axle path are designed with riding in mind, not having to do the job of also managing the feet.
Yeah.
So that would be huge for me.
Like, I mean, I've tried the E13 hub. I've tried the O-Chain, the Impact, and same, since I've tried that, I don't want to ride a bike.
No, it's
unless it was an iPivot, but the last time I rode the iPivot was 5 years ago, so I would have to but I want one of those devices at all time on my bike.
Totally.
People think it's expensive, and what can it do? I'm like, once you try it, you don't want to take it up.
The braking is so different for me. Like, I think sometimes, depending on, some 4-bars are worse for it than others, but like, you once you go to these devices, then you come back and you do back-to-back testing, you realize that when you touch your rear brake, your head tube height drops a bit. Yeah. And that is a horrible feeling when things are getting rough and weird.
It's more consistent.
Yeah, it's so much better.
And I read the comment, I did a video about it, and someone said, you say you see better, it's bullshit. Because it removes some of the vibration, your rear wheel you don't have the feeling that you get hang up on stuff as much, because suspension can be more active, there's less chance slap. I feel like I see better. I feel like I'm more like calm on the bike.
I recognize that, actually. Yeah,
and to me, that was one of the biggest benefits. Yeah. Obviously, less noise, more comfortable on the feet. Yeah. When you do long laps, like super long laps, and it's like those small impacts, I find it way more comfortable on the feet, without even talking about how the bike rides, just the actual comfort.
But imagine riding, I think, for flat pedal riders.
Yes.
I mean, I ride clips, but it must be fucking game changing. Yeah.
Actually, it's I haven't ridden. I pretty much never ride flat pedals, but I'd be curious to ride. I think it's even more noticeable for flat pedal riders, just because of the benefit of it.
Yeah, totally.
So 29 with a device such as a Impact or is setting up. We talked about the geometry. What travel?
I would go 170. I might even give away a bit of stack height for if you just got loads of head tube to play with.
Yeah.
For me, once you've gone on a 38mm chassis fork, travel doesn't weigh anything. If I was making a big burly bike, I might even go 180mm fork, and
that's true.
It's like you're in for a penny, in for a pound. I think something I really, really like, and one of the reasons, a theme that I've noticed in the bikes that go from being, that's a really good bike, to a bike that I feel I really love, is having something that really is happy to go into its stroke when you hit the rear brake. I just feel there's something about that consistency, and it comes back to that just to the head tube and where my hands are sitting, and how, whether it pulls or not, my upper body, and I don't know. I think there's something about the feeling like the bottom bracket is dropping behind the front axle under braking, that for the confidence I'm seeking is really, really important.
Well, no, I feel the same, because you usually brake when you go downhill. So if it's the case and your bottom bracket drops, normally, especially if you're a heavy front brake user like I am, if you press on your front brake, what happens? Your fork dives, right? But if your bike can sag, and your bottom bracket drops as much as your hands, that's gonna give, at least for me, a lot of confidence. I don't feel like my weight goes forward, which is a bigger thing when you're trying to slow down and it's steep. So yeah, I do experience the same. one thing I was gonna ask you, so we talked about the travel. Actually, sorry, one thing that you mentioned, actually I never thought about it this way, but you say travel doesn't weight anything. It's actually, especially with an air fork, because basically it's
the fucking same, yeah.
It's exactly the same. Often people ask me if I prefer the Propentaille or the Spindrift. I do feel like I prefer, I mean, I ride the Spindrift more, mostly because of the trails here, because they are, they're fast and demanding. Sorry, not fast, they're rough. The amount of compression we get, I listened actually to another podcast and the rider mentioned that, actually, I think that was your podcast with Elliot. He's talking about the compression. I hadn't really thought about it, but the amount of compression we get here is like nothing else in the world, because you need the grip, you need the change of slope. You need to go from like really steep to like flat and steep again. While I grew up in France, we didn't really have that. So like some of the G-forces and some of the compression that we get without even taking off, without even having the wheels go off the ground.
Just ride the source at the moment. So there's rutted turns when the bike catches and wants to stand up.
You can go super deep in the travel without even taking off, so, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just your choice between the two bikes, this is going to be the most ivory tower bullshit thing, bike media person, that could ever be said. So if you're listening at home, I know that it sounds ridiculous, but I think when riding this time of year, it's a bit slower. The ground's not so firm. A 150mm bike feels really nice.
Yeah.
But when, even in 3-4 months time, when things get drier and harder and holes develop and you go faster, you want extra travel.
Totally.
And like right now, there's actually it's a really lovely thing to go around at 150mm travel.
Yeah.
And you try and be precise. And I'm on a stump jump at the moment, which I'm reviewing, which I'm really enjoying. But in the height of summer, I want that bike? No, I want an enduro bike.
Yeah, no, totally. That's actually, I'm doing a video tomorrow talking about settings. And like the settings that I found that work for me right now are based on the conditions. Because, I'm setting up the bike, but right now the speed I can go on the sauce versus when it's perfect, my speed is way slower today or tomorrow than it will be in, 2 months when it's perfect. And so that's always something to take in consideration. But between the Taille and the Spindrift, for example, I'm like, both bike pedal really well. Hey. Yeah.
Amount of Toby, my dog, has ruined so many podcasts. She's pretty good.
She's really comfortable because she's never sat, and she's always been there. But she usually stays down.
Toby goes inside my car, inside my garage,
everywhere.
It's like this like padded cell.
Yeah,
and then we go into a different room. Hey.
But yeah, between the Taille and the Spindrift, because they both pedal really well, you just have one that feels stronger because it's been developed to, take more essentially and go on bike path, and it's got extra travel. Hey, you just feel like you can just go faster.
Yes.
Essentially pedal super well, but can take more.
Yes.
And the weight difference is peanuts.
Yes.
It's not much.
It's not, and I think, I just think that I've died on this hill many times, but I think the industry, so the consumer who fund the industry, I think sometimes we have this thing where like, I don't know, it's like, it's not the mountain bikers out there spending their hard-earned cash that are funding the industry, when of course it absolutely is. And I think that they have been so wholly underserved by bikes that have just been too light. Like, it doesn't fucking matter. And this idea that like, obviously, if I had a 120mm travel bike, would I want it to weigh 2 pounds less if I could? Yeah. But when you're going in all this, and you need downhill tires because you're going to puncture immediately if you don't, and you this, that, the other, and you're braking wheels and you're pushing hard. Like the idea that, for instance, like brake rotors took like 10 years just to get thicker. And we're doing all this like ice technology and stuff. And it's like, it just turns out making them thicker, did it? And we were so averse to the weight. And I think similarly again with,
but
go on.
The weight thing, I feel like it's really become a thing since people ride good e-bikes. Because at first the e-bikes, they were not.
Are there good e-bikes?
I think the e-bike. I think I want to ask you about that, but I think the e-bikes right now are fantastic. Like it's so fun. They ride really well downhill. And because now they've got really good geometry, companies no longer have to sacrifice the suspension to fit the motor. They're able to design, a bike with a really good kinematic and just strap a motor on. And now the riders are like, hey, wait, the weight's nice. The weight is like low down.
Yes.
Why am I going so much faster when it's rough? Like, my bike doesn't move around. It's like less physical when I'm on straight line. So now people realize, actually a good bike doesn't have to be light. Of course, if you pedal uphill and if it's your focus, then you want it to be light. But if you just talked about the downhill, having a bike, I'm trying to focus here. When you ride downhill, having a bike that's a bit heavy is quite nice.
I think there is a sweet spot though. Like we've got a video coming out where we compared the E-Druid or Druid E, whatever it's called, compared to the Levo 4. And the way those bikes both held their weight in different places, the Levo just felt like it was sat almost at the head tube. That's it, right? That was my fault.
Too much.
I got rolled up. Are you going to be chill?
Yeah, that's...
should we put it downstairs?
Yeah. Sit. Stay. Okay, we'll try. We'll try.
Yeah. And I just feel like, I don't know, man. I think like those TQ motor sort of style bikes, I think probably did hit a really nice place in terms of weight. But I don't know, some of these big birdie bikes, sometimes, man, I just fucking despise.
You don't like them, eh?
No, it's not that I don't like them. And I think that if more people can get outside, that's really a good thing. But I do think there's this element of like when I think, for instance, the TQ or the harmonic pin ring, whatever it is, that I think is amazing. Super cool. That new Orbea that's like almost like a bit more than Enduro bike. Fucking cool. But I do just think that like, if you ask a racing car driver what they want, they will never say a safer car. They will always say a faster car. And we're in this position with like e-bikes getting more and more powerful. Listen, DJI doesn't give a fuck about mountain biking. They want a spec sheet to be really impressive. There's a 1300 watt update coming out, I've heard. Yeah. Dude, that's going to fucking land access. Like when a dog walker gets run over by someone going boost mode of this, like maybe this sounds like me just being a really like that gatekeepery guy that worried about things.
No, I get that because I have a full power e-bike. It's not 1300 watts. But the full power SRAM. I've got the TQ. Honestly, I love both. They're both different. They both serve different purposes. For people out there to buy any bike, do you go for the one that's like really powerful and heavy, or do you go for the lighter one? I think it's gonna depend a lot on what other bikes do you have
and who you riding with.
On who you're riding with. Because if you're the only one with a 1300,
but I think, and this is going to be me going up, up on my soapbox here, but I think like e-bikes. I think one of the reasons I'm so reluctant to them. And listen, like I'm someone that works, like my job is funded by marketing dollars. We have partner brands, we try to really disclose them, but the bike industry pays me. So that is something that I don't want to sound like that's,
She disagrees. Huh?
She disagrees. But, I think if it's about getting more people outdoors and enjoying the sport that I love, fucking sick. And I think there are so many options to do that. But I think there's certain parts of the e-bike development that just lays bare the cold, hard consumerism, which is at the core of some aspects of the mountain bike industry. And to the people that want to enjoy outside, fuck yeah, get after it. To this sort of, like I said, like extracting thing where it's just like, let's go to 1300 watts. Let's go to 1500 watts. Let's try and constantly make it. So we've always
prefer a light e-bike.
Yeah. So we've always got to try and buy fucking more bikes. I just think that's a load of shit.
I think what's happening with the e-bikes though is that it's technology and it progresses so fast. I think companies are still trying to figure out what it is. But I do agree having, a cap at X amount of power.
But imagine
it's pretty enough.
So think of like Tadej Pogačar. He's probably got an FTP of 400 watts. 400 watts is enough.
Yeah.
Imagine having Tadej Pogačar and saying he's going to sit in your downtube for 2 hours doing everything. That's plenty.
Yeah.
That is fucking plenty.
Well, that's what I liked with the TQ motor is that on a little screen, it shows you, you get different options. But one of the options, it shows you how many watts you put, how many watts the bike puts. And it's pretty cool. Like you pedal, you start like putting some power and then you look down and you're like, oh, my bike's putting 350 watts. Me, I'm putting 300 watts. That's 650. That's still less than like a pro cross-country racer that's going to smash her uphill for like 10 minutes or whatever.
When I started at GMBN, EMBN was the sister channel, still is the sister channel. And Steve Jones, who was someone that I grew up reading, obviously in Dirt and all this sort of business, was sat next to me in the office, which is, for my first ever job in mountain bike media, was hugely flattering and fucking nuts. And he said, what do you think of e-bikes? And I just said, I think they're, at the time I was kind of gatekeepery and kind of like, fuck this. I was like, I think they're wank. I think they're fucking stupid. I don't like them, X, Y, Z. So then because he was also a big character, so we ended up having this like back and forth that was like like quite core to our friendship. And they said, one of the guys, John, who's this amazing filmer, he had this idea to be like, can we convert an e-bike hater? And so then they put me in, that's when I've been at the company for like a month or two. And they put me in front of a camera and they said, what do you think about e-bikes? And I said, well, they're not really for me, but if someone was to ride them, obviously fair enough. And it's fun to wind Steve up, but you know. And they said, no, can you like lay it on a bit thicker? And I said, okay. I said, well, I don't like them, but that's kind of okay. And everyone's allowed opinions. I said, no, can you lay it on really thick? And so eventually at the end, I was literally there like some fucking, you know, in those like American shows where it's like Ricky Lake, whatever. And it's like, he's a piece of shit. He can't stole my car. I'm literally there like, fucking e-bikes are so bad. And that's obviously what they put in. And I was so naive to it at the time. Like I hadn't really made video for very long and it was completely fine. Like, but I don't know. I look back at like my relationship with e-bikes and I guess I probably have a tendency to be willing to die on a hill. Listen, dude, if we get more people out there and they're having a really nice time, that's fucking sick. If we're just using e-bikes to extract as much money from them as possible, I think that's lame.
Yeah, well, it's a good way to see that. So you mentioned GMBN. So after, we'll come back to the bike at some point, but after being World Cup mechanics, then you went to GMBN.
Yes.
And then Pinkbike.
Yes.
I guess Pinkbike is when you moved to Canada,
yes.
Of course. How is it working for Pinkbike?
Well, okay, working with Pinkbike was the dream. It was, fuck man, it was so sick. Like, I mean, I got incredibly lucky to get in at GMBN. This guy called Matt Skinner, who now works for White Bikes, who, I mean, just like gave me a chance and was amazing. I think, you know, GMBN was a really, really great company, but I think after living in New Zealand for however long, going back to live in the UK, I didn't really adapt. And so I decided to move on. And then, I actually just messaged, I didn't know what I was going to do. I messaged, Jason Lucas and Brian about some writing. And then they very kindly brought me into the fold. And it was, I don't know, man, I got so weirdly like, it's like, you know, there are some things I think like, you know how the Red Hot Chili Peppers, a couple of years ago, they got a young guitarist.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's grown up listening to the Chili Peppers. And then he gets to play music with them. Yeah. And that's what it was kind of like for me. It wasn't like starting a new band, which is kind of more like what Core to HB is. But just working there was just such a massive privilege. And it's not lost on me that like, I wouldn't have like Core HB would not be a thing. You know, there are plenty of equally passionate people as me who have the exact same skill set that didn't get the chance to work at somewhere like Pinkbike to then be able to, so like, you know, Pinkbike, changed my life, man. It was amazing.
Okay. Sorry, before we talk about QWERTY HP, let me get rid of her.
Yeah, sure.
Naya, come on. I can leave you here. Up. Okay, sorry about that. Actually, I didn't think she was going to be a trouble.
I make she smells my dog and stuff.
Come on, Naya. Normally, she just chills. Hopefully.
Very excited.
Okay, so Pinkbike, how many years you did? Sorry.
No, that's right, dude.
Sorry about that.
No.
I won't even edit this part. Naya, up, downstairs. Go downstairs. Up. Come on. On your bed, Naya. On your bed, Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So Pinkbike, how many years did you do there?
I was there for 4 years.
Okay. And your exact job title? Oh, sorry, what you did?
What I did. So I started off as a technical editor. which is basically a bike reviewer. Then I moved over to the video, and I was video strategy manager.
Okay.
And that basically involved trying to like set the tone and feel for videos and podcasts.
Okay. And after that, so you decided to leave to start your own adventure.
Yes.
So can you tell us, before you tell us what is Quarter HP, what was your original idea? What did you have in mind, and how is Quarter HP exactly that, or how is it different?
Oh, great question.
From what you have thought.
I felt like Quarter HP, or my idea of it, could not exist without people like Pinkbike and Vital and, like a whole host of like, MB UK brands and whatnot, because they do a really, really good job of educating the consumer. If you want to buy a bike, you should 100% check out their reviews. You should absolutely listen to their advice. But it was my feeling that, a lot of time mountain bike media, if you're a kid or teenager, you're really well catered to. You get like, Matt Jones, Sam Pilgrim, GMBN, like that. You got so much to watch. If you're an adult that loves racing, which is becoming more difficult, you've got racing to really, really focus on. But if you're an adult that doesn't love racing as a mountain biker, you don't really have that many options that aren't like really visually stunning riding. You don't get me wrong, you can watch loads of people do really great, cool stuff, but in terms of like having something that's story driven and actually like entertaining and like isn't afraid to lean into like archetype and character a bit. Like we never want to make anything that's like, the idea was never to make something that is like bullshit or whatever, but just largely to just talk about the feeling the bike gives us and not focus on like, well, this is actually 5 millimeters shorter than that bike. And then that becomes the whole thing. And so I had this idea where, so that was one half of it, which is a really important part, where I wanted to make these things, which, to be honest, like you can see in my videos at Pinkbike, they were the prototypes for what Quarter HP would eventually become. And then we wanted to fund it. And I guess for me, I always felt that the best quality testing would be just to have control parts. Like, and I suppose I got not more frustrated. That was something that was like, it wasn't that, I don't want to like in any way sound like bitter about the Pinkbike thing, because I'm really not. Like they really sorted me out. But I guess the part of my brain that is incredibly like detail focused and felt that I really wanted to offer something in terms of the quality of testing to the audience. It felt like the way we were doing it with full builds, it didn't really work for me.
Well, because all it takes is one component to not be good, and then you have a bad experience on the bike.
Yeah, basically. Or like, or sometimes it's really hard to, review bikes and how to put it, make sure you're not reviewing your day. Was that bike fucking sick? Or did you ride a sick trail? And so for me, like, I'm so happy to be willfully boring. Like I'm happy to ride the same trail every single like lap, like make notes, do this, do that, go back, have lunch, swap the bike, do the same thing again. Because for me, I just think I could be down a fucking coal mine. You know what I mean? But I think that with like that style of testing, I guess I felt, one, I was moving away from testing my role at Pinkbike to focus more on video stuff. And I guess I just felt, what if you could be really, really good testing, and so you can be absolutely assured on how that bike makes you feel, and then talk about the feeling, instead of maybe not being absolutely sure in the testing. So then you talk about the 5 mil. That was my thought, and just being like, you don't care about like, I don't know the wheelbase of my car. I don't know if you know the wheelbase of your car.
I do not know.
Yeah. But when someone said how it drove, you're like, that's the feeling I want.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was the sort of the idea. And so we had this idea called the hybrid model, which is, instead of having, normally at Pinkbike, whatever, your job as an editor is to make something interesting enough that people keep coming back to Pinkbike. And then you get a sales team, which is completely separate, and it's very much divided. Like, you never speak to them or anything, and they sell advertising on the website. And so there's always like a church and state thing where you want to keep it separate, but also it's difficult because if you review a Fox fork and it's coming out on that day, then of course Fox have taken out the banner ad on the website. And so it looks, the Fox fork, which is amazing because it's the biggest suspension brand in the world, making a suspension fork they've done for 20 years or whatever, combined with the big banner ad, it feels
like it's paid for.
It feels weird, even though it's not. And so I just thought, why not be incredibly clear? And like the fact that like we're in a situation where brands who like Max is like, are the only brand of tire. If I run Max for the rest of my life, I'll be fucking stoked. And the fact that they're willing to fund it is fucking nuts. And we're very, very, very proud of our sponsors. And we couldn't do it without them. And we could hopefully offer something that's just super clean. These people pay me, and I'm proud to take their money. And if
you want to deliver,
and then these are the things we don't take money for, which is frames. We never take any money from frame manufacturers.
It costs a lot of money to make videos. So that's my next question. So you got 4 people in the team, including yourself. Did you always want to do something with more people, or did you just realize it's like, well, I can't do that by myself? I need to either hire someone or I need to team up with someone. Like
all the people that we work with were people that I'd wanted to work with at Pinkbike, or I worked with Tom the filmer at Pinkbike. Remy, I approached to do coverage for Pinkbike, and Lettuce, me and him had sort of, he interviewed me, I interviewed him, and we always had this thing, I think, where, at least for me, it was always like, oh, I'd love to work with that guy one day. And then so when I came up with a name called HP, and I just immediately got the YouTube channel and the website like that day.
Okay.
And then the next day I quit Pinkbike, or like the next, couple of days later. And I gave Pinkbike, I tried to be quite gracious in the notice period because I didn't want to leave them in a pickle in any way. And then sort of breaking down, like I knew we needed someone that was a foil for me, which obviously Remy. I knew we needed a filmer. And then Lettuce, which for some people, I think having 4 people, one of them being a producer, probably sounds a bit stupid. Like, how much organizing do you need?
Not just a producer.
He's not just a producer. And he makes 6s into 8s and 8s into 10s in terms of our quality. And obviously we're still learning, we're still getting better, but he's a really good catalyst for pushing me to be better, and also having someone he's done like Red Bull race tapes and stuff. So he's very, very high. And
his stuff is really,
it's really good.
Yeah.
And I think, Tom does an amazing job on the visuals, and he's got that area covered. And then Remy has got he keeps me so, it sounds a bit stupid, keeps me so honest in terms of testing and in terms of product feedback. And he's so great there. And then we actually, I'm going to be honest, when I left Pinkbike, I grieved it like a relationship. And I'm so proud that although it was honestly, it was like a strange, probably 6 months. It kind of took me to really accept that I'd walked away from my dream job. And it was, in a lot of the ways I validated and considered myself was as someone that worked for Pinkbike. It was very strange. But I'm so proud that even though I wasn't necessarily feeling my optimum self, I think I just made some really good decisions. The lads that I work with could not be better. And one of the things I'm really proud of is that we run it as a cooperative. So we all have equity. We all get paid the same. And it just means that I'm just not like a corporate person, and everyone knows that we're building something together.
Yeah.
And it's like, although it's obviously, it was my seed, but it's all our plant, and that's fucking cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's good, man.
So right now you've been reviewing, you've got a podcast. Mm-hmm. Is there any other plans?
There's bits and pieces. I mean, I think that starting it was unbelievably, we all, not hard in the sense that we didn't enjoy it, but it was hard. Understanding how we work together, our workflows are this, I think, what it's like when you make Lettuce said something really great the other day. He said as people, we try to make so many systems for things and Word and Google Docs and all this shit. And it's completely natural that most of them don't survive. Yeah. But we had all this energy pulling in all these different directions. And so coming together to actually really understand how we make videos was a huge undertaking. And now there's actually some stuff that we've been saying we're going to do from coming up to 7 months, now 8 months. So there's stuff I can't quite speak about, but we want to go, we want to make stuff we're really proud of. And I think we're we're kind of in a place where hopefully we can do it.
Okay. Even if that involves e-bikes?
Even that involves e-bikes. Listen, I can tell you what's a good riding bike.
Well, because you don't like e-bikes, I feel like it will take a lot for you to be impressed by an e-bike.
Exactly.
Actually like it.
Yeah. And I think like, we did this e-bike test recently and like, I'm really, if I had one bike would have been an e-bike. Probably not. If I had two bikes, probably not. 3 bikes, yeah, one probably would be an e-bike. And I like that. I guess for me, I rage against the machine of the bike industry. People having a nice time on their e-bikes is fucking sick, and I'm not trying to rally against that. So I also can have a nice time on an e-bike. And after like if you're short on time, short on a weather window, short on energy, e-bikes are fucking sick.
Yeah, they get people out. Like they get me out all the time.
Dude, totally.
I would have never ridden today.
No,
never.
And the trail riding in Squamish is getting better because of e-bikes.
Yeah.
People can take tools to the top. People can get to places. Like e-biking is contributing. Like, I mean, again, like, I know I can be slightly gatekeeper, but I want to be really clear. Like e-bikes themselves, the people buying them are not the problem. They are fucking come on in. Hell yeah. It's people trying to extract money from those people for just bullshit crap we don't need. That I don't agree with.
That's fair point. Is there anything you think that we missed that you?
I don't think so, man. I think we covered a lot. It was really, really great fun chatting.
We talk about the bikes, like, obviously parts is a different story, but yeah, I think the geometry is just like one thing I'll say. So you said like, you don't want to worry about like +5 or -5 millimeter. You want to like focus on how the bike feels. And that's something that I learned and people at home have to learn also. You can watch something on paper and think, I'm not going to like that. Or I'm actually going to really like it. But once you ride the bike, it's a bike as a whole. So if the chain tires are a bit longer than you want or a bit shorter than you want, because of so many other variables, because of, how the suspension feel, what's the rear wheel, axle pass, and all of that stuff that you thought you may really like or dislike, you might actually get a complete different feeling. And that's something I've learned, is that, sometimes I'll get the geometry of the bike before the bike is produced or before I get the pre-prototype or pre-production or whatever. I'm like, and that was the case, for example, for several bikes. I'm like, the chainstay was so long. And the engineer will be like, well, we had to make them longer because of the motor. We can't make them shorter. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to like that. And then I get the bike and I'm like, wow, actually I did like that.
But do you think,
on paper, I thought I didn't.
I think that, I mean, to be fair, 5 mil on chainstay it can be, I mean, but I think that anything less than 5 mil is probably a good rule of thumb to not worry about it.
Yes.
To see, like you said, like axle path.
It's really hard unless you've been trying but every bike's different. Every suspension's different. You put a cold shock and air shock, bikes feels different. Like just you change the tire. You put a downhill casing versus a double down, the bike feels different. A 35 millimeter rise or 50 millimeter rise, like your stack is much different, like your positions, everything changes with just by swapping one little thing. So sometimes you really have to think about the bike and the product as a whole and not just, I don't like that because on paper it's like a bit short or a bit long. That's like the one thing but I felt like me to give feedback to like will be engineers in my case. I have to be precise. And often I have to look at the number and be like, well, that bike to me feels better because it's, 5 mil longer.
Yes.
And, I've tried all those bikes and I'm actually feeling better on this. So turns out like my ideal reach is this much based on the bikes that I've ridden.
But I think there's something where like, you can enjoy the effect of something even if you can't pinpoint it down in the moment.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something, that one of the things, we're trying to service is like,
well, sometimes it's really hard to explain what you like or what you dislike, but you're like, this just feels right. I don't know what it does or exactly like, am I feeling am I feeling, is it the suspension or is it the flex of the wheel or whatever? I'm feeling something that I like.
But it's funny that it's like, that's the, I think it's the Dunning-Kruger effect, where it's like, when you have very little knowledge, you have so much confidence. And then you basically, as you learn more, you realize you have less confidence, and then it's all the way back up. And it's like being confident enough and knowledgeable enough to say there's something I like that defies my expectations around this bike, or the geometry chart, something that just works. And that is actually like a fucking, that's an absolute golden egg to further understanding, like, what's up? Because that's what happened with me with like long rear ends and shorter reaches. Like I said, I was like, I'm 6 foot. I should be on a 485mm reach. And they're just getting short. And I was like, it's funny how all these bikes have been fucking amazing. Oh, that's the common denominator. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no, thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks to you. We'll be watching the videos.
Yeah.
And I look forward to see what you think of the next bike. We can't say yet what it is.
Yes.
But he's gonna try. Henry's gonna try a propane bike at some point in the future.
We just sent it to Ride Wrap. It went off today. So hopefully it'll be back.
Mine is there too. So.
Oh, sick. Cool.
Yeah. What color is yours?
We got a matte grey one.
Okay.
Yeah. It looks nice.
I got like some kind of a white.
Yeah. I think their bikes have started looking really great. I've got to say, they've done a great job. Yeah. And there's one of the things I can't talk about on camera is something that I'll tell you about in 5 minutes that we'd love you to come with us.
Okay, sounds good.
Sick.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers, dude.